The House Judiciary Committee hearing room was filled to capacity that Tuesday morning in Washington. DC C-SPAN cameras were rolling as lawmakers took their seats. But no one could have predicted what was about to unfold between Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett and Ohio's Jim Jordan. Before diving into this heated exchange, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more moments the mainstream media often overlook. Jasmine Crockett sat at her place, her navy blue suit perfectly pressed, gold earrings reflecting the bright committee room lights. She had prepared for this moment for weeks. Inside her briefcase were documents that would shift the course of the hearing. Jim Jordan, the committee chair, walked in with his usual confidence, sleeves rolled up, ready for confrontation. He had no idea that within 20 minutes he would be left completely silent on live television, unable to counter the evidence about to be presented. "The gentleman from Ohio has made serious claims," Crockett would soon declare, her voice calm, but charged with purpose. "But I have proof that what he's been telling the American public is false." Those words would echo across social media for weeks. But first, how did we get here? Jasmine Crockett wasn't supposed to be the one making headlines. The freshman Congresswoman from Texas's 30th District had served less than 2 years in Congress. At 42, she brought a new kind of energy to Washington, a civil rights lawyer with years of experience fighting for people who had no voice. Her story wasn't one of privilege. Raised in St. Louis, she saw inequality firsthand and chose law as her tool for change. Before coming to Congress, she made her mark in Texas defending voting rights and representing victims of police misconduct. Crockett knew how to build a case, present evidence, and remain composed even when opponents tried to provoke her. Many in Washington underestimated her because she was new. That was their mistake. Jim Jordan, by contrast, was a congressional veteran. The 60-year-old former wrestling coach had served since 2007 and was known as a hard-charging conservative with a reputation for fiery exchanges and absolute party loyalty. As chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jordan held significant influence. He was known for controlling the narrative, commanding hearings, and pressing witnesses relentlessly. For weeks, Jordan had led a series of hearings on what he termed government weaponization. He claimed that federal agencies were targeting conservatives, covering up corruption and suppressing free speech. His allegations dominated headlines. Fox News gave him primetime coverage. Conservative commentators treated his claims as fact. His social media following exploded. But Jasmine Crockett was quietly watching and investigating. 3 weeks before this hearing, her team received an anonymous package from a whistleblower. Inside were internal documents, emails, and recorded conversations directly contradicting Jordan's claims. Even more surprising, the whistleblower came from within Jordan's own circle, someone with first-hand access to private communications. Crockett and her team spent 3 weeks verifying every detail. They confirmed the authenticity of emails, consulted cybersecurity specialists, and even sought review from a former Republican lawmaker who validated the evidence. Crockett knew she would only have one shot at this confrontation, and her proof had to be airtight. When the hearing began, Jordan opened with his usual dramatic flair. He called witnesses who backed his narrative, asked leading questions for viral clips, and interrupted Democratic members who tried to challenge him. He appeared confident. The session's official topic was alleged FBI bias. Jordan pushed the narrative that the agency had become a political tool targeting conservatives. For months, he had framed this as a deep state conspiracy to silence right-wing voices. This was meant to be his defining moment. CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC all broadcast the hearing live. Political circles buzzed online with commentary. The stakes couldn't have been higher. This was about shaping the national conversation ahead of key elections. At exactly 10:08 a.m., Jordan brought the session to order, his voice booming through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we're uncovering may be the greatest misuse of government authority in our nation's history," Jordan declared confidently. "We have evidence that the FBI has turned into a political weapon, targeting everyday citizens because of their beliefs." He raised a stack of papers dramatically. "I have sworn statements from FBI whistleblowers, confirming that agents were told to investigate parents at school board meetings, to surveil faith groups, and to target conservative organizations without cause. Republican members nodded. Cameras clicked rapidly. Jordan was in his element, performing, for his base and creating the viral moments he'd become known for, but he had no idea that Jasmine Crockett was about to turn his entire narrative upside down. The Democrats want you to believe this is all just a conspiracy theory, Jordan declared, his voice growing louder. But we have the receipts. We have the proof, and no amount of distraction from my colleagues across the aisle will change that. He then turned to his first witness, someone he described as a courageous FBI whistleblower who had risked everything to reveal the truth. The witness began testifying about alleged directives to investigate conservative organizations, about quotas for domestic terrorism cases that supposedly pressured agents to inflate threats from right-wing groups. For the next 45 minutes, Jordan led a carefully managed presentation of claims. He interrupted Democratic members who questioned the witness's credibility and brushed aside requests for verifiable evidence as political obstruction. It was clear he was performing for the cameras, creating sound bites designed to dominate conservative media coverage. Representative Adam Schiff attempted to intervene, asking for specific documentation supporting these allegations. Jordan quickly dismissed him. "The gentleman from California has had his chance to grandstand," he said. "We're focused on facts here, not Democratic talking points." Tension filled the room. Democratic members looked increasingly frustrated, while Republicans appeared energized, some even laughing at Jordan's remarks. Everything was going according to Jordan's plan. Then it was Jasmine Crockett's turn. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Crockett began evenly. She adjusted her microphone, took a sip of water, and fixed her attention on the witness. "Sir, you testified that you were ordered to investigate conservative groups without probable cause. Can you provide the specific directive, the actual document containing that instruction?" The witness hesitated. "Well, Congresswoman, these weren't always written directives. Sometimes they were verbal instructions from supervisors." "I see," Crockett replied. "So there's no written documentation. What about recordings of those verbal instructions?" "No, ma'am." "Do you have any witnesses who can confirm that these verbal directives occurred?" The witness paused. "I'm sure others had similar experiences." "That's not what I asked," Crockett continued. "Do you have anyone who can directly verify your specific claims in your particular case?" Before the witness could respond, Jordan interjected. "The gentlewoman's time is limited. Let's move on from this fishing expedition." Crockett smiled faintly. "Mr. Chairman, I'm simply asking for evidence to support serious accusations. That's what this committee is supposed to be about. Facts and proof." Jordan's expression hardened. "The witness has provided sworn testimony. That is evidence, is it?" Crockett asked calmly. "Because I have here a report from the FBI's Inspector General that directly contradicts this witness's timeline." She held up a document. According to this report, the witness was already under investigation for unauthorized disclosure of classified information 3 months before these alleged directives were issued. "Isn't it possible, sir, that your so-called whistleblower claims are an attempt to deflect accountability for your own misconduct?" The witness began to respond, but Jordan interrupted sharply. "The gentlewoman is engaging in character assassination. This is the type of intimidation we're investigating." "Mr. Chairman," Crockett replied steadily, "asking for evidence isn't intimidation. It's responsible oversight. But if we're talking about intimidation, I have something very relevant to share with this committee." Jordan leaned forward. "The gentlewoman's time has expired." "Actually, Mr. Chairman, I have 4 minutes remaining," Crockett corrected, glancing at the timer. "And I'd like to enter several documents into the record." She opened her briefcase and removed a folder. The room grew noticeably quiet. Even the reporters in the gallery leaned forward. "Mr. Chairman," she said, "you've spent the last month claiming that the FBI has been weaponized against conservatives." "You've held 3 hearings on this topic," Crockett began. "You've tweeted about it 47 times. You've appeared on Fox News, Newsmax, and OAN to discuss these same allegations. But what you haven't told the American people is that you've been coordinating with these so-called whistleblowers long before they ever came forward." Jordan's eyes narrowed. "That's absolutely false. The gentlewoman is making baseless accusations, am I?" Crockett replied, holding up a sheet of paper. "I have here an email dated 6 weeks ago. Would you like me to read it to the committee?" "The gentlewoman doesn't have the floor for that," Jordan interrupted quickly. Mr. Chairman, you just called my claim baseless. I'm offering to present the basis, unless of course you don't want the American people to hear it. Murmurs spread among Democratic members. Representative Jamie Raskin spoke up. Mr. Chairman, if there's evidence relevant to this hearing, the committee should hear it. Jordan hesitated. If he refused, he'd look like he was hiding something. If he allowed it, he risked exposure. Cameras were rolling. The country was watching. The gentlewoman may proceed, Jordan said through clenched teeth, but let it be noted this is highly irregular. What's irregular, Crockett countered, is coordinating with witnesses before they testify. But I'll read the email. She adjusted her glasses and began reading clearly. From Jim Jordan's personal email. Danu redacted. Subject witness, date 6 weeks ago. Quote, we need your testimony to align with what we discussed. Remember, the narrative is FBI overreach. Do not mention the disciplinary actions against you. We'll address that separately. The media package will be ready once you testify. End quote. The room erupted. Democrats rose from their seats. Republicans shouted objections, and Jordan pounded his gavel. His face flushed red. Order! Jordan yelled. That document has not been authenticated. The gentlewoman is presenting false evidence. Crockett remained composed. Mr. Chairman, I have the metadata from this email. 3 independent cybersecurity firms have verified its authenticity, and I also have something else. She took out her phone and connected it to the committee's audio system. This is a recorded conversation between you, Mr. Chairman, and another alleged whistleblower. The recording was made legally in a one-party consent state. Jordan stood abruptly. This is out of order. This is not how this committee operates. Mr. Chairman, Crockett replied firmly, you've spent months accusing others of cover-ups and conspiracies. Surely you're not afraid of a little transparency. The recording began to play. Jordan's voice was unmistakable. Look, we need someone with FBI credentials to say they were pressured to target conservatives. I don't care if it's technically accurate. We just need the story out there. The media will run with it. And by the time anyone checks the facts, the damage will be done. Can you find someone willing to say this? The room fell silent. Even Republican members stopped objecting. Jordan sat motionless in his chair, his expression blank, his face pale. For perhaps the first time in his congressional career, Jim Jordan had nothing to say. Crockett continued, her tone measured. Mr. Chairman, this committee has been chasing the wrong conspiracy. The real conspiracy is the one you've been orchestrating, manufacturing fake whistleblowers, creating false narratives, and misleading the American people for political gain. She held up another document. I also have financial records showing payments from dark money groups to your witnesses. $50,000 to the witness testifying today, $75,000 to another from last week's hearing. All routed through shell organizations connected to political committees supporting your campaigns. Jordan finally spoke, though his voice was subdued. These are fabrications. This is a political hit job. Mr. Chairman, Crockett replied, I have bank records, wire transfer confirmations, and signed contracts between these witnesses and political operatives. Would you like me to read those as well? Representative Matt Gaetz jumped in. This is clearly a coordinated attack on the chairman. These documents could be forgeries. We demand time to review them. Congressman, Crockett said, turning toward him, I'm happy to provide that time. In fact, I've already forwarded copies to the Department of Justice, the House Ethics Committee, and the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. They'll have plenty of time to review them. The Democratic side of the room came alive. Raskin was already calling for a formal investigation. Schiff was carefully documenting everything for the record. The Republican members sat in silence, unsure how to react. But Crockett wasn't finished. She had kept the most critical evidence for last. Mr. Chairman, she began, you've accused the FBI of unfairly targeting conservatives. Yet I have here a document showing that you personally requested FBI investigations into 3 Democratic activists in Ohio. You used your position on this committee to pressure the FBI into probing your political opponents. She held the document up for the cameras. This letter, dated last year, is on your official letterhead and bears your signature. It shows you demanded the FBI investigate these individuals for potential terrorist connections, when the only reason was that they had organized protests opposing your Policies. Jordan's hands trembled as he reached for his glass of water. He tried to take a sip, but his grip was unsteady. The glass slipped, spilling water across his desk. The microphones picked up the sound as he scrambled for napkins. "The gentlewoman's time has expired," Jordan finally stammered. "Actually, Mr. Chairman," Crockett replied calmly, "I yield my remaining time to the ranking member." She leaned back in her chair, composed and confident. Ranking member Jerry Nadler stood. His tone was measured but firm. "Thank you, Ms. Crockett. Mr. Chairman, in light of these revelations, I move that this hearing be suspended immediately and all evidence referred to the proper authorities for criminal investigation." Several Democratic members immediately seconded the motion. Jordan remained motionless, unable to even call for a vote. His chief counsel leaned in, whispering urgently, but Jordan didn't respond. He sat staring straight ahead, as if absorbing the reality of what had just unfolded, his political future possibly collapsing on live television. For 13 seconds, an unusually long silence in a congressional hearing, Jim Jordan said nothing. Cameras captured every moment. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but no words came out. His expression shifted from disbelief to anger, then to blank resignation. The entire room watched. Republicans waited for him to lead, to push back, to offer any kind of defense. Democrats waited to see if he would attempt to recover. Reporters had their lenses locked on him, recording what would soon become one of the most viral political moments of the year. Finally, Jordan's chief counsel took the microphone. "The committee will take a 30-minute recess." Jordan stood mechanically and left the room without saying a word. He didn't even strike the gavel to make it official. He simply walked out, leaving behind an audience stunned into silence. Within minutes, the clip of Jordan's motionless reaction was everywhere. Jordan freezes became the #1 trending topic on social media. Within half an hour, those 13 seconds of silence played repeatedly on every major news channel. MSNBC ran the headline, "Jim Jordan, left speechless as Crockett reveals alleged conspiracy." Even Fox News, typically supportive of Jordan, led with, "Shocking allegations shake House Judiciary Committee." Political Twitter erupted with reactions. Liberal commentators hailed Crockett's precision and preparation. One viral post read, "This is what happens when you challenge a civil rights attorney without the facts," gaining over 200,000 likes in less than an hour. Memes spread rapidly. Jordan's frozen expression appeared across countless formats, from the confused math lady meme to classic Vietnam flashback edits. But the impact extended far beyond social media. Within an hour, 3 Republican members of the Judiciary Committee released statements distancing themselves from Jim Jordan. One read, "If these allegations are true, they represent a serious breach of public trust." Another stated simply, "I had no knowledge of any coordination with witnesses and would never endorse such behavior." The witnesses scheduled to testify after the recess quietly disappeared. 2 left the building during the break and refused to return. Their attorneys later issued statements saying their clients would be reassessing their testimony in light of new information. When the committee reconvened, Jordan was absent. His deputy was forced to preside over the remainder of the hearing, which quickly unraveled. Democrats introduced a series of motions, calling for investigations, subpoenas, and criminal referrals. And without Jordan's leadership, the Republican opposition fell apart. Several GOP members even sided with Democrats on procedural votes. That evening, CNN's Anderson Cooper opened his broadcast with the footage. "What you're about to see may be the most devastating political dismantling in modern congressional history," he said. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett didn't just challenge Jim Jordan's story, she dismantled it piece by piece, backed by documented evidence. Even conservative outlets struggled to defend Jordan. Tucker Carlson suggested it might be a deep state setup, yet he couldn't explain away the audio recording clearly featuring Jordan's own voice. Ben Shapiro posted a detailed thread urging patience for all the facts, but admitted that, if verified, the claims were deeply concerning. Late-night hosts turned the moment into cultural commentary. Stephen Colbert ran a segment titled "The 13 Seconds That Broke Jim Jordan," complete with a countdown clock. Trevor Noah joked. Jim Jordan was so quiet. I thought my TV was muted, turns out. It was just his career ending in real time. Still, beyond the humor, serious journalists began uncovering broader implications. Within 48 hours, the Washington Post published an in-depth report corroborating many of Crockett's claims through additional sources. The New York Times found 3 more whistleblowers who admitted they had been coached and paid for their testimony. Jasmine Crockett quickly became a national political figure. Her social media following grew by more than 500,000 in 2 days. Every major network requested interviews, but she remained selective about where she appeared. When she did speak, she remained composed and factual, never boastful, and continually redirecting the focus toward integrity and transparency. This isn't about Jim Jordan, she told Morning. Joe, this is about protecting the credibility of our institutions. When we create false narratives for political gain, we damage the democracy we claim to defend. Her campaign donations surged. Small dollar contributions poured in nationwide. Crockett for Truth merchandise appeared online, and conversations began about her potential future in Senate races or Democratic leadership. But Crockett stayed grounded, emphasizing her commitment to her work. I'm a lawyer, she said. I follow the evidence. That's what I did before Congress, and that's what I'll continue to do. Her colleagues praised her professionalism. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, Jasmine Crockett just showed the country what real oversight looks like, Nancy. Pelosi described her as a fierce defender of truth and justice. Even some Republican members privately admitted they were impressed by her thoroughness and composure. Jim Jordan attempted to push back the following day. At a press conference, he claimed the documents were taken out of context and that he was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. But when reporters pressed him for answers about the recordings, the payments, and the emails, he struggled to respond. We're reviewing everything, he said, pausing before adding, the real issue here is government weaponization against conservatives. A reporter interjected. Congressman, isn't paying witnesses to give false testimony the true example of weaponizing government? Jordan abruptly ended the conference and walked away as reporters shouted follow-up questions. Within 72 hours, the House Ethics Committee had announced a formal inquiry into his conduct, and the Department of Justice confirmed it was reviewing the matter as well. 3 witnesses who had previously testified in Jim Jordan's hearings later recanted, admitting they had been coached and paid for their statements. As the revelations surfaced, Republican leadership began to distance themselves from Jordan. Kevin McCarthy issued a cautious statement urging patience while the process unfolded. Mitch McConnell, when questioned, replied briefly, I haven't been following it closely. Soon, Jordan's speaking engagements were quietly canceled. Conservative organizations that once planned to honor him removed his name from their schedules. Media invitations stopped coming, even from friendly outlets unwilling to take the risk. While he was under investigation, the confrontation between Jasmine Crockett and Jim Jordan became more than just a failed hearing. It symbolized the growing danger of political theater replacing real governance. Political scholars later described it as a pivotal event. Dr. Sarah Martinez of Georgetown University wrote, the Crockett-Jordan exchange proved that in an age of social media and non-stop coverage, truth still holds power. Manufactured realities collapse under genuine scrutiny. The fallout inspired calls for reform in how congressional hearings were conducted. Lawmakers from both parties pushed for stricter witness vetting, disclosure requirements, and increased transparency. For Democrats, Crockett's victory became a roadmap for countering misinformation through solid evidence and calm preparation. She even led training sessions to share her approach. For Republicans, the episode served as a warning about prioritizing spectacle over substance. A new generation of members began advocating privately for fact-based oversight, instead of performative investigations built for social media. 2 weeks after the hearing, the FBI opened an investigation into possible witness tampering and conspiracy related to the false testimony. Several of Jordan's aides hired defense lawyers. The dark money organizations that financed the witnesses drew scrutiny from the IRS and Federal Election Commission. Jordan himself retained one of Washington's top white-collar defense firms, reportedly spending over $2 million, and later setting up a legal defense fund, which created another controversy over questionable donors. 3 of the fabricated whistleblowers eventually pleaded guilty to lying to Congress. They received probation in exchange for cooperating with investigators, revealing a broader network linking Jordan's staff, political strategists, and media figures in efforts to spread false narratives. The incident dramatically shifted power within the House. In a surprise vote, Jordan lost his Judiciary Committee chairmanship after several Republicans joined Democrats to remove him. His successor, a moderate Republican, pledged to focus on facts rather than theatrics. Jordan's downfall left a leadership vacuum among conservatives. The Freedom Caucus splintered between loyalists and those eager to move on. His endorsement, once sought after, became politically damaging. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's reputation soared. She represented a new style of Democratic leadership, assertive yet composed. Her endorsements began influencing polling numbers, and her name appeared on shortlists for future vice presidential contenders. The controversy also triggered a reckoning in the political media. Outlets that had repeated Jordan's claims without verification faced criticism. Some issued corrections and acknowledged the need for greater skepticism. Media literacy became a topic of national conversation as people questioned how unverified narratives had dominated news cycles for weeks. Several news organizations adopted stricter verification policies for congressional coverage. The Columbia Journalism Review published an extensive analysis titled The Jordan Lesson: How Political Theater Became News, highlighting how the chase for viral content left outlets open to manipulation. 6 months later, the political landscape looked very different. Jim Jordan remained in Congress, but had become largely irrelevant, silent in hearings, absent from debates. His once fiery social media presence faded to occasional retweets. Rumors circulated that he might not seek re-election. Jasmine Crockett, however, had become one of the most recognizable figures in Congress. She launched a podcast breaking down political issues with clarity and precision. Her book deal reportedly reached 7 figures. Despite the growing attention, she stayed disciplined, appearing selectively, always prepared, always armed with evidence. The criminal investigations expanded, implicating more individuals in what prosecutors called one of the most serious attempts to manipulate congressional oversight in U.S. history. Though Jordan had not been charged, the investigation appeared to be tightening around him. Political historians would later describe the Crockett-Jordan confrontation as a defining moment in American politics. Proof that in an era of misinformation, truth could still prevail when backed by preparation and evidence. Universities began teaching the event in political science and law courses. It became a case study in oversight, strategy, and composure. Crockett's methodical dismantling of Jordan's arguments was studied like a masterclass in political precision. The phrase, "pulling a Crockett," entered the lexicon, meaning to completely dismantle an opponent's case using irrefutable evidence. Conversely, pulling a Jordan came to describe freezing under factual pressure. Young people, especially women and people of color, saw in Crockett a model of empowerment. You didn't need seniority to challenge power. You just needed facts, preparation, and courage. Law schools invited her to speak about her methods, where she emphasized, "Evidence is everything. Never make a claim you can't prove. Always be ready for pushback, and never lose your composure." The exchange between Jasmine Crockett and Jim Jordan was more than a viral moment. It was a demonstration that accountability was still possible in Washington. It showed that authority and seniority could be overcome by preparation and truth. Jordan's silence, those 13 seconds of stillness, became symbolic of what happens when performance politics meets reality. You can argue, accuse, and perform. But when the facts are undeniable, silence becomes the only response. Crockett's rise proved there was still an appetite for leadership grounded in facts, not outrage, for strength without hostility, for debate without personal destruction. Her approach began influencing other members, gradually improving the tone and quality of congressional hearings. Witnesses, too, became more cautious, aware that falsehoods could be exposed as decisively as Crockett had done. Looking back at that Tuesday morning in the Judiciary Committee room, it's clear that something fundamental changed. When Jasmine Crockett presented her documents, played the recordings, and deconstructed Jordan's claims, she didn't just win an argument, She reminded the nation that truth still carries weight. Jim Jordan learned that day that repetition and volume cannot create reality. No matter how many times a narrative is echoed or amplified, undeniable facts will always cut through. The image of Jordan, frozen in silence at his chairman's seat, became one of the era's defining political moments, where political theater collided with accountability, and theater lost. For Jasmine Crockett, that hearing transformed her from a freshman lawmaker into a national leader. More importantly, it proved that when you rely on facts, preparation, and integrity, you can challenge even the most entrenched power structures. If you found this story insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder of what real accountability looks like in Washington. Because as Jasmine Crockett proved that day, facts matter, preparation matters, and in the end, truth always wins over performance. Every time a new political scandal emerges, people still ask, what if you get Crocketted? And every time someone thinks they can bluff their way through a hearing, they remember Jim Jordan's 13 seconds of silence. That's the lasting legacy of that day. Not just a viral clip, but a powerful reminder that in American democracy, truth still matters, evidence still counts, and one prepared voice can expose an entire web of lies.